dip to create more moisture. It's very. It's because the Earth is orbiting.
Right, right, right.
So I just got back in. I'm sorry. Just to just finish off, I just wanted to finish that last thought. There's also a concept that no matter what you do, your brain has a biological clock, and for every person it's different, and it's on a clock, and it could be 24 hours and you die. It could be 76 years and you die. Each person has this clock.
Like Final Impact.
It's a genetic clock. It's a marker too. It's marked on your
Say again?
DNA.
Well, I
I'm
said it was
sorry.
like Final Impact, and death will come for you when it's supposed to.
The Final Destination, you mean?
Final
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Destination.
Final
Oh,
Impact.
underrated. That's another underrated movie right there.
First one for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Destination.
One of the
Mhm.
most brilliant lines I quoted often was in that movie.
That's
he
one
was
of the
like, "We
movies
live
I
our
had to watch twice.
when he's doing the obituary and he's like, we live our whole lives, casually, going through our days, expecting the next moment, when reality is we're not guaranteed 3:00.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
He's
It's
like,
like
the reality
super
is we're
deep.
not guaranteed 3:00.
Yeah,
It's just
your
like
movie, Pam, is like if they took Final Impact and if they took
Fatal Impact.
Final Destination and Double Impact, the
Yeah.
Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, and
No,
kind of
Final
just
Impact
mashed
was
them together.
that was
Is-
the Meteor movie.
That was
That was
with
Deep Impact.
Freeman.
Oh,
That was Deep Impact. So
That's
that
with
might be a
Freeman
better
was the
mashup.
president.
That might
That
be
was-
a better mashup. Deep
That's
Impact
right.
and
Uh-huh.
Final Destination.
Oh, Pam, we're revoking your film license. We're revoking your film
No,
license.
I think it's great. I think
I
that
know
would
so
make a
much
great
about
film.
movies too. I can't get
That
the title
sounds-
right today.
That would make a great film. Deep Impact
I'd
and
watch it.
Final Destination.
I'd watch that.
Where like
As long
the
as
meteor just
Morgan
follows you
Freeman's
wherever
in
you
it.
go.
It's like the asteroid misses Earth, and people
Right.
just randomly drop dead anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
Like, what's going on here?
exactly.
And the whole time they're on Air Force One flying around the planet because they don't want to touch the Earth.
The pilot just dies.
And they're playing that Door song.
It's like we got to worry about a meteor, and people are just dropping dead.
We should just make that movie.
I think you
I
should
think
throw
parody law.
Groundhog's Day in there as well.
Absolutely.
So, like,
Right.
every
Why
day you
not
wake
just
up-
have it keep happening over and
Yeah.
over again.
So like the first day
what's
you
the
wake
really
up
dope
and you
one
get
with
killed
Tom Cruise?
instantly, but by the third
Oh.
or fourth day you figure out.
Die. Oh,
Die, repeat. They
girlfriend-
changed it
or
though.
my wife, loves it. Yeah,
They changed the
did change
name. It was called Die, Repeat, something like that.
Mm-hmm. But now it's like, it's still a stupid name, but it's a decent movie. It's one of my
They're
favorite
supposed to be
Tom
doing a
Cruise
sequel.
movies.
It's a great movie. It's a great film.
Right.
Wait, what
Mhm.
movie are you guys talking about?
He dies, and there's these aliens that keep.
Oh, that's a good movie actually.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's
they're
the
supposed
best
to be
Tom
doing a
Cruise
sequel.
movie. Tom Cruise movies.
Yeah,
Dope.
it's
That
definitely
one's
better.
the best one.
Tom Cruise movie.
Name Top Gun. No.
They keep
No.
giving him life, like they keep.
So what happens is the aliens can control time. So every time the alien fails, it just resets the day. And each
Oh.
alien can do, not each alien. So there are several different aliens. They're fighting against aliens on Earth. And there are several different types of aliens that fight the war for them. But each alien has like, I don't want to call it a commander, but it's like a thing because I don't understand the alien culture, but it's like a thing assigned to them. And this thing can reset time. So every time it fails or its troopers fail, it just resets the day.
I think they were genetically modified, and I think that those ones were specifically designed for that, like each variant of the creature. So anyway, Tom
Mhm.
Cruise gets to this variant of the creature, or did he kill it or something? I think
He
he-
sent it back into. Remember that he went in with
I
it
can't remember
into where it was
exactly what
from
happened.
because they were coming
Yeah,
from like a
into the
void
time
at the
loop.
bottom. Yeah,
So he follows it into the loop, and he starts getting the ability. And so like he keeps devising new ways to get to the queen or whatever. Was it a queen? Could we call it a queen? We're telling her the
it
whole
was
movie.
just the boss of that particular quadrant because there's a bunch of them.
You guys,
was-
you're
it
talking
was
about
very
War of
cool.
the Worlds?
No,
Oblivion.
no.
That was
No.
Keanu
This
Reeves.
is-
No, that
Oblivion.
was Tom That was Tom Cruise.
Oh, it's Tom Cruise. You're right. You're right.
It reminded
Reeves
me a
was in
lot of.
Mars Attack.
It was very Dune-like, so I loved it because of
Mars
that. Because
Attacks was the best movie ever.
it had a lot of Duncan, Idaho symbolism. It had a lot of
Can't wait for the new
Water
Dune.
of Life. Oh, I know.
Can't wait for the new
I've
Dune.
never been more excited about anything in my life.
I just
don't
put a
even
friend of
wanna-
mine onto the book, right? And it's his first time
Right.
reading these books. So guess what
Best
he's doing
book
on
ever
Facebook all
written.
the time? He's
Talking
just all
about
he's
it.
doing is Dune quotes. You know, because
Right.
there's so many quotes. There's like 1,000 quotes in Dune that are just relevant to today. He's
Back
just
in
dropping
back
Dune
in
quotes.
2000 what? 2000 was it 2002, Flav? I did like a presentation all about that, about how
Yeah.
it's really about what's going on in the
in the world.
in the world right now. That Frank
Like, did
Herbert
someone
was
travel from the future
Right,
and give
he-
Frank Herbert all this knowledge in the 60s? And, and like,
Very
this is what's going to happen.
strange. It's
And then he
very-
just
the
writes
sleeper
about,
is awoken. The
Yeah.
sleeper is awoken.
yeah, like somebody went back. It's when you read Dune, it's like, how did this dude in the 60s, this guy
all
who
this
had,
stuff.
remember, he didn't even start writing the books till he was in his 50s. He had like 10 occupations throughout
And-
his life. He
and the
was not a
reason I-
writer.
People
I
were
say
pretty
it's a
woke in the
mirror.
60s.
Huh?
People were pretty woke in the 60s.
You have
Not
to
like
read Dune
this,
to
not like
understand
this
what we're
book.
talking about.
This book is like a mirror. It takes
Of
everything.
human history.
It takes all of human history and you know how you're told one thing, you're told, oh, this happened and this happened. Well, Dune says to you, hell no. This is what really goes on. The Chom, the spicing guild, and the navigators, and all of these inner workings of the real world. And he uses symbol or like naming culture, like the Shaddam.
Religion and
Yeah,
all of it.
right. Renaming religions like the Orange Catholic Bible to where it's
Right.
the Protestant Bible.
Benny Gesserit.
the
Like,
Bene
you
Gesserit.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
The
And
Sunni, or the
Bene
Zen,
Gesserit,
the Zen Sunni. Like he
the
like
Zen
combined
Sunni,
like
and the
Zen and Sunni Muslim.
Zen
like, yo,
Buddhists, the
Yeah.
Zen Buddhists, Buddhism, Islam, and Sufi Islam and Buddhism all got intertwined into one religion because what happens, and I don't want to spoil too much of it, is they travel through space by folding space. Like they use
Oh,
spice
well,
to
that's
do
what I
it.
was gonna. That's what I was gonna mention earlier. Was the as far as the problem with going faster than the speed of light, is folding space.
Folding space is
supposed to be.
different though.
they don't fold space.
Well, they open essentially wormholes because they're worms. You know what I mean?
But they use
I don't know if they actually call them wormholes.
they use pre-science. They use the ability to
to
see
determine
into
where
the very near future.
where. Well, I always they say it's folding space.
What the fuck
They
are you
do-
guys talking about?
Yeah, they're
No,
talking
I'm
about
telling you,
Dune.
this is
They're gonna go
this is
on
a great
forever. We
book.
should cut them.
Yeah, we're not.
We should
we're
cut
not,
them
we're
off
not.
now
Oh, cut it
because
off.
they can go on forever. Um, yeah, that's what happens.
Terrible.
But the
But
terrible.
the interesting concepts of Doom that parallel reality, right, is like you have the Fremen who are oppressed, i.e., free men. You know what I mean? And they're like an oppressed culture
Former
that
slaves.
have a resource that it's anyway. Yeah, let's not get into it.
No, because we'll ruin it. And she's got to read it.
But it's one of the things, Mike, that I've always mentioned when we talk about certain issues involving marginalized people in this country, right? Because like the Fremen in this book are oppressed, and when they not only do they overcome oppression, they become the oppressors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And worse. And worse. That's what's scary about it. Like,
Right. Oh, speaking of which, the Black Panther, the Fred Hampton movie came out today.
Yeah, I did. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I hope it's good.
Which one is
what
that?
streaming service is it on?
It's Lakeith Stansfield and
Daniel
Kaluuya.
Kaluuya.
They're doing another movie
from Get
together.
Out?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh,
wonder if they got-
I saw that. I think it was on Hulu or Amazon. I saw it today.
It's on HBO Max.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll have
Yeah.
to check that
Oh,
out.
you saw it?
I didn't see it.
I saw the
Oh, okay.
preview.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
saw the ad for it. Yeah.
Yeah, the preview looked pretty good.
Yeah.
That story has been, people have wanted that story to come out for a while. I'm like surprised that they, the book that I'm reading, I keep alluding to every once in a while. It's just one of those really great books. The African American and Latinx history of the United States is kind of like going through the effects of the Haitian Revolution on African Americans and like just how people felt about it. And it's just kind of like one of those things like, how did we not learn about that? Like how was that
Filtered
not
history.
taught? Yeah.
Well, because
Well, I think curriculum. We need curriculum. I think we need more culture added into our curriculum, but we need curriculum, right? I was always told that college is the place where you can spread your wings and go outside of, say, a particular curriculum. Again, I'm critical of the curriculums that we use because they're certainly based on pushing the level of economy, whatever the economic engine is. That's what the high school curriculum is based on. That's what the elementary and high school curriculum is based on. It happens to be capitalism, but whatever's driving capitalism right now, what's the CPU? It used to be the assembly line. Now it's the CPU. So our education is streamlined, Mike, Flav. So you're right. You're absolutely right when you say, why didn't we learn these things? Well, there's a lot of things I think that we should have learned about all of the different cultures of people that comprise America.
Yeah.
But because it's streamlined to kind of push capitalism, at least that's what I was taught. I was taught that college is the place for you to kind of spread your wings. Not that everybody has an opportunity to go to college.
Well,
know
yeah,
what I mean?
that's
That
one
doesn't
issue.
stop you from educating yourself, though. I mean,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but if
One-
you don't know, how can you educate yourself about it?
because here the bottom line is, libraries are free.
That's
You
true.
Yeah,
know.
but she's making a point though, Matt, in the sense
Yeah.
that Mike is reading a book that seems very compelling to me. That Mike didn't read, like we're in our 40s.
Right. True.
And I just learned about the Haitian uprising like maybe a year ago, within the last year, because of some show that I was watching. It wasn't even like,
Yeah.
from a
And this is essential to what happened in America. I mean, this gave us, the spiritual energy, and it really motivated us to do what we did. So I mean, the two are intertwined, and this book talks about this intertwined history throughout Latinx countries and throughout Caribbean countries as well, and America. And if you just shut it off at our borders, you're not getting the true picture of what was happening.
Well,
Flav.
We
Yeah.
didn't learn much of any, like personally speaking, like I didn't learn much about slavery except for it happened, it was bad. Abraham Lincoln was the president,
he
and
came and is gone.
yeah, I mean that's really it. Like we didn't learn anything about like Harper's Ferry. We didn't learn anything about the black soldiers in the Civil War. Like, you don't learn anything.
Most kids have that story. I don't. I went to a very decidedly liberal elementary school.
Did you? Hey, is that Montessori that you went to?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay. Because Coach Garcia. I love Coach Garcia. She's one of my favorite people.
I see her all the time.
I used to have coffee with her. I'd skip class, and she's a very progressive lady. Awesome lady.
Mm-hmm. My elementary school was very progressive.
Right. I went to Hutch Tech.
So you had her when she left.
So I had her. Yeah, and she was like my gym teacher, and I would take my study halls in gym because she was so awesome. Like she's the coolest lady I ever met in my life, bro.
I mean, we'd get to school in the morning, and we'd sing songs in the morning, right? We had like a morning, it was called morning meeting, and we'd sing like "This Train Is Bound for Glory," and you know what I mean? Like our school was very liberal.
Similar. We had Pi Day, and we had 314, and we had like Christmas, 12 Days of Christmas, like was some kind of weird ritual we had there, and I don't know. It was very, very interesting. She was a great lady, though.
I didn't realize how liberal my school was till some years later. Obviously, after I graduated, because as a kid,
but
it's not something you think about.
Was there too? Spanish Italian teacher. Lejakino, Mrs. Lejakino. I think he taught there
I
at
don't,
one point.
I don't, I don't, I
Maybe
don't
not
know.
him. You don't know.
But I know,
So
like
just-
when
I
you're
knew you
singing
knew
songs like "This
Garcia.
Train Is Bound for Glory," like that song is about the train is the Underground Railroad.
Right.
Like you're, so it's like we
We
were just singing it like every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like just
yeah.
as you know. And it's like, I wonder what parents felt like. But then I realized, like, oh, there's a reason why they sent their kids here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just one more thing to say about the Haitian uprising and the fact that we weren't taught about this in school, and the significance of it is, it was the only slave uprising that led to the founding of a state which was both free from slavery and ruled by non-whites and former captives, and is now widely seen as a defining moment in the history of the Atlantic world. And
Liberia.
what's that?
That's what I was gonna say. Liberia too, even though that's supposedly I've never been there, but the same thing happened there.
No, I was saying that with a question mark. It's like, is that what it led to?
Oh no, he's talking about Haiti.
Yeah.
I know.
Haiti,
sorry,
yeah.
Haiti.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I know he's talking about Haiti, but I wonder if maybe there was some repatriation.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. That's why when I said Liberia, I said it with a question mark because I
Okay.
don't know.
Can I ask you guys a question? Because I know very little about African history, but
Mhm.
was Liberia in the 40s and 50s? Was Liberia was it a black run country?
It was French, I think, before that, before the revolution. I think it was French owned, French or German.
Yeah.
Oh, it might have been German.
But then
Because World War II, Italy, Germany, France were taking over every country in Africa because they needed strategic. Africa has 90% of the world's resources.
right.
Africa
they were
and South
just-
America.
Right. So they were just using it to get oil, to get steel, whatever they needed. They would set up shop, rip it out of the ground, and then they would they'd own the country.
Right.
And the country wasn't worth. They didn't need the country. That's why a lot of countries are smaller, and the borders are strange. Is because they're made by resource development, and it's a terrible, terrible situation. Like most African countries are not. No country is in the whole world, but in Europe you have a more direct cultural, like Germany is Germany because it developed over generations. These were carved out in months.
Right. And I understand that, I understand the European colonization of Africa.
Okay.
But what I mean is that, because I read something, I think it was A Raisin in the Sun, where the boyfriend of the girl, do you guys remember that play?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sydney Poitier.
Or Sean Diddy Combs, whichever you prefer.
I prefer Poitier.
I prefer Tupac.
Not Raisin in the Sun.
Yeah,
Right.
he was in that.
Yeah, it's
Wasn't it-
Poitier. It's Sydney
Wasn't
Poitier
it
all
called
day.
something else though? In the not Raising the Sun though, was it?
What?
Yeah, I think so.
The theatrical production of the Tupac version, I thought had a slightly different.
Oh, I was about to say the
title.
original is Sydney Poitier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the original play.
Okay, but here's my point. So the daughter in the show, in the play, was dating a black activist, and he was talking a lot about Libya. So I was wondering if that was because
Libya or Liberia?
Libya
Liberia.
is different than Liberia.
Oh shit.
Liberia.
Liberia? I don't know. I don't remember now because it was quite a while.
You would have been
ago.
talking about Liberia.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, Liberia is supposedly
Mike's
America
or
granted-
plays flipping it up.
America granted Liberian independence, whereas in Haiti,
okay.
the Haitians took it.
Right. Is it so that's what happened? That's why I'm I don't know the history. That's what I'm saying. So Liberia is an independent African country, run by Africans now.
Well, most countries in Africa are run by Africans.
Now, but that was one of the first, I believe.
Okay.
There are countries in Africa that there are people who are non-indigenous to Africa that are African now.
Right. 'Cause
So-
they lived there for a couple hundred years or whatever.
Right. But you'll find Africa's got the most countries, right? Like one of the oldest civilized cultures in human history is on continental Africa, through Egypt, and obviously Nubia, which was absorbed by Egypt.
Yeah, so in 1848, Joseph Jenkins Roberts was elected Liberia's first president. So I'm going to assume he wasn't African.
Well,
Right.
I pretty much I forget what movie it was in, and they had a depiction of it. Oh man. And I'm trying to remember.
Historical references are from movies.
Right. It's sad, right? It's really
that's
sad, but I just remember the American. It was like straight chaos there, and so like because everybody just left. Like here you go. Like we can't. It's not worth it anymore.
Well, Africa has a history that is kind of unique, right, as a continent, right? So, and it's interesting when we put it in perspective, because it's the largest continent with the most countries. But like Matt alluded to, and like Mike just confirmed with, the president, like how long were there countries on this continent? It's arguable if left unchecked, Africa would be like Australia, right? A continent and a country, but a supercontinent. Because if left unchecked, Egypt would have took it all. If left unchecked. If it wasn't for intercession, go on.
Only reason Australia is one country is because originally nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted anything to do.
It was a prison colony. It was a penal colony.
They were just throwing crazy, insane people.
From Britain.
Yeah, murderers, lunatics, rapists, anybody that they were like, we don't want them. We don't even want to jail them anymore.
But with Africa, though, there weren't really defined borders for a period of time, right? Like in the Old Kingdom, there weren't defined borders. In Egypt, kind of just there were very few cultures that challenged Egypt
because of
there just wasn't the political structure. Say again.
Because of their pure size, like their population.
Well, Egypt was a conquering country. They conquered.
Tribal nature of the societies. Just
the rest of the countries were tribal, where Egypt stopped being tribal. Not that there's anything wrong with being tribal, but Egypt stopped. They formed a nation state. They formed, they developed politics. They formed militaries, and then they conquered other kingdoms.
Was that, and I know that I'm going off on a limb here, but does that, do you think have to do with the Greek influence?
No, that was the Middle Dynasty, right? When the Greeks became pharaohs.
I feel like Egypt had more of an influence on the Greeks than the Greeks had on Egypt.
They did.
Gotcha.
Because the Greeks had to come to Egypt.
Right.
The Egyptians weren't going to Greece.
Right.
Egypt, women can vote. In Egypt, there were lawyers and there was property law, and there were all these awesome concepts that were so unique. And Greek still had a nation state where slavery was cool, Sparta, and young boys were put to the death because they didn't want to fight each other, or if they did, they fought. You
got to look at it like this, right? The Greeks didn't come to Egypt and conquer Egypt.
Right. No.
They came to Egypt as scholars. They learned from the Egyptians, gained their trust, and integrated with the Egyptians. So that is how they ascended to the Middle Dynasty, which was the Greek pharaohs. That's how they were able to ascend to the throne, through actual marriage, through actual we're as Egyptian as we are Greek. We're not. Right. This isn't a subjugation where Egypt pays tribute to Greece. This is these Greeks integrated, which is interesting, because only one other culture was really allowed to integrate with Egypt, and that was Nubia. When Egypt subjugated Nubia, they didn't conquer them. They let them integrate, right? Everywhere else they conquered and enslaved. They integrated the Nubians.
Oh, hey, last thing on Liberia, it was basically where former slaves were sent back to Africa.
Yeah, I was wrong about that.
Yeah, former slaves that were sent back, that were freed were sent back to Africa, and they settled in Liberia. And then the U.S. decided to grant Liberia liberation.
Like Israel?
Well, like Sierra Leone from from the Brits. Syria,
Right, because the Israelis just migrated back to their home country. With Liberia, former slaves were allowed to go back to Liberia.
Okay, so they were allowed to.
Were allowed to go back to Africa.
When they were freed in this country, they went, you know.
Well, it's a little bit shadier than they were allowed to.
Shadier than that. Oh, they sent them there?
They were.
Oh, man. They're like that. This is bad.
Well, I didn't put a connotation on it because I know how shady it was, because once America understood that Black people were having a different understanding of economics, which is why they quelled the so-called Nubianism and Nubian movement and got rid of the entire concept of letting us go back to Africa or speak about Pan-Africanism. Like, Pan-Africanism came a bad thing after civil rights because we were learning about economic systems and ideas and concepts outside of capitalism.
Right.
And that whole Pan-African movement was now a bad thing. They can say, the average racist white person can say, go back to Africa, but the government ain't trying to hear that.
No.
What are you talking about? Go back to Africa, learn some concepts, and send them back to these people who are now have equal rights.
Right.
Like,
and have all the resources.
Right.
All the stuff is over there. Like,
do you remember what happened when we freed them from slavery? They started to accrue wealth, real wealth.
I think that's
we had to take it from them.
That's the true why racism is spewing so divisive and so full of hate lately, and why people like Trump have gained power in our where they have, and Boris Johnson, is because it is fading. It is stupid. It is the world is going to be a different place in 10 years from now, and they can't accept it. So they're gonna. Speaking
of fading and stupid, one reason that Haiti is so poor is that up until recently, maybe as late as the 90s, certainly very recently, they were paying back reparations money to their former masters.
Oh man,
like the French. Basically, when Haiti,
reverse reparations.
Yeah, exactly. When Haiti freed itself. Later on, the French came back and threatened them with warships and said, give us money or we're going to fuck this place up. So they've been giving them
just like them
large amounts of money, like 50% of their GDP or something ridiculous. All these
not
years.
Right. That is not right.
But I mean, we paid reverse reparations to our slave owners in the U.S. too, and and so did they in the UK.
Really?
So people act like the idea of reparations is so crazy. Like, we've done it already. We just gave it to the wrong people.
I don't even like the term, and this is again not a criticism. This is about, I don't even like the term reverse reparation. Like, we paid reparations. We performed indentured servitude. Not only did we pay reparations, we pay reparations in every positive way, and if there can be a positive way, in every negative way. Like, those people who came out of slavery had to go through Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They had to go through indentured servitude. They had to go through to me, it's a type of reparation when I have the ability to purchase land, and you're going to do everything in your power to make sure that land is removed from me.
Yeah.
By killing people, my loved ones, like, you're gonna do everything possible.
They would poison the water supplies, and that's not like now, the hacker that tried to put more chlorine or whatever in the water. They would literally go out to these people's wells and pour gallons of poison into them, and nobody would ever find out. These people would end up dead. Move them off the land. They do it to Native Americans. They do it to anyone non-white landowners. This was not frowned upon even for many generations, and it's such a terrible part of our history
that is never acknowledged.
No, nobody wants to talk about that. I don't even want to talk about it right now, but if I don't, then we're not acknowledging the reality of the situation in this country.
So my question is, how do we talk about it without re-traumatizing people?
If you have to, people are going to be traumatized. A good way is we are doing a lot of movies and things are finally being a lot more I don't want to say inclusive, because it's more than that. It's
Like
reality filming. It's filming something with I seen a Russian film where the Russian actor spoke Russian when they were in Russia, and when they were filming scenes in England, everybody spoke English. And yes, you have to watch it with subtitles, but it brings you more into the experience of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want it to be dubbed all in English, or all in, if I'm Spanish, all in Spanish. Like Pan's Labyrinth's another one of those movies. It's a Spanish movie. I don't want it to be ruined with English. And I mean, that's a whole nother point. But now we're finally seeing a true reality instead of a Hollywood. Like, people want to make real movies now. People want to make real television. People are fed up with just telling the softer story to everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
Go ahead.
So I'm not traumatized. Two, I want to hear what you're about to say.
Okay.
But I do have an interesting segue, actually.
Oh, well, segue away, because I don't really have. I mean, I have tons of things to say, but we could go on forever about how, like, what
I think
really
he was
went
talking
down
about
this.
Pam. I think he was talking about Pam.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to hear what you were about to say, Pam.
No, oh, me? Go? Okay. What I was saying is that, like, when I see images or hear stories about people who somehow survived, not just slavery, but just the experience of being Black in America in general, and it's upsetting to me, right? And I can't imagine that perspective if those people looked like me, or if they were somehow related to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so horrific. Like, the things that I've learned, like the horrifying truths, like the actual horrifying shit, like details. And it's just, I don't know how you can present that like in school without like traumatizing these kids with the actual vision of it. Like, seeing.
Well, they don't.
I know.
Well, that's what she's saying. She's like, I don't want to say you're justifying it, but that's the justification for why we don't talk about these things and why we don't discuss the darkness of our history, of our ancestors. Like, we have to answer for that, though. And one way or another, we're gonna do it through another Capitol riot, or some other awful incident.
I think if I mean, yeah, I mean, the fact that we're introduced to slavery when we're young, and we're introduced, well, later on, to like the slaughter of Native Americans, not even that when we're really young. But if they're going to introduce it, then they should talk about these other things as well. But I think, as far as trauma goes, if we can connect the issues that have happened to creating like a positive future where things like reparations are possible, maybe it makes it easy. Maybe it like lessens the blow,
Yeah, because like, I mean, right, because there's a lot of white people, I think, that don't grasp how incredibly dehumanizing that experience has been and still is, and I think that if they were able to like actually, like, I think that I think that some people just need to be like kicked right in the gut with it, but at the same time, like, that's not really fair to do to like the people who've experienced it firsthand.
Right.
So like, how you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think one of the most terrible things I've seen in recent months is we had Martin Luther King Day recently, right? And you know how social media is, everybody puts the faces on everything, right? And somebody was talking about, I'm trying to remember the play. It was DK Metcalf of the Seattle Seahawks. He was talking about he was going to use all the month of February or from Martin Luther King Day in through the month to talk about Emmett Till, to bring up a story that nobody hears about. It's like what we're talking about, and people are putting laughing faces on this. What kind of monster? Like, you want to laugh about it? Laugh about it. For you there's like 5 things that go through your head. You laugh in your head, which is sick, first of all. Then you think, man, I got to do something. Let me put a face on there. And then you do it. And then you some of these people are putting ridiculous comments. Like, that comment's never going away. That face is never going away. And they're not afraid to do it.
Yeah.
These are the sick people we're dealing with. So they hear this history and they don't care.
Well,
or they don't believe it.
There's a certain amount of people who don't care. And I agree with that. They just don't give a fuck because of their their psychopath, like psychopathy, whatever it's called, because they're sociopaths or whatever. But like,
pretty much.
Like, they're psychopaths. Like, you obviously are a psychopath. You know what I mean? But like, also, I think that there's a group of people who just don't know. And this goes more to what you were saying earlier, Matt, that there's libraries everywhere, right?
But they don't want to inform themselves. And you're right about, I'm being facetious. A lot of times I speak just because we can't continue to coddle everyone in society on like a intellectual level. Like, oh, I'm sorry, you don't understand. Like, what kind of a world is that?
Right. No, I agree. I agree that there's like some self-responsibility to it. But I think that if you give them the little things first, like the Haitian Revolution, they would at least know that stuff like that has happened and that it could be like a little tiny seed of information that could like foster the curiosity.
It sparks your interest for sure.
Exactly.
It makes you very hungry for more.
Right, because what it does is it disproves, and I know that I'm speaking to the choir here, obviously, but it disproves that concept that somehow the Africans that were kidnapped and brought to America as slaves were somehow lucky to come here.
Right. Like, good thing they were slaves in America, and like the real weird parallel is the way that they talk about if you notice how they'll talk about Egypt and the slaves in Egypt, and they talk about the slaves in I think of another, like Assyria, or the slaves in, like, our slaves were different. All the other slaves, horrible. The slaves that built the pyramids, and they were treating them unfair.
It's American exceptionalism.
Right.
Even
you're lucky you came to America and you built America. You didn't build pyramids.
Right.
We've got less than 60 seconds left.
Man.
This was a great conversation.
I know.
This was great.
I'm sorry we lost it at the end.
Yeah. So we should we should get together again sometime.
End it here. That's good, because my wife's being neglected and I hate to do that to her. She's a lovely lady. Well, she sees this too.